spending way too much of my time debating and like trying to push forward this narrative of, we don't want SegWit 2x. We need to keep Bitcoin decentralized, and we need to scale it out on second layers with Lightning Network and efficient with our usage of Bitcoin, so that we keep the fees, we sort of keep the block size low, so that we scale it out by compressing transactions on the base layer and then putting the extra stuff on second layers and side chains.
Right.
But I was looking at it like, okay, well, we've got the biggest exchange, Miner. All the companies that own the Google search terms for Bitcoin are all on this other side. This is a pretty insurmountable mountain we've got to climb.
I remember, by the way, in those days, and I remember that debate. I remember scaling it up, and I remember guys who had been like vintage 2010, vintage 2011, saying to me, "This might be it." I mean, it's hard to believe now, but there were people in 2017 who were smart and were in the space for a long time who thought it might all come tumbling down.
Well, a lot of those folks ended up becoming shitcoiners, as like colloquially, or not.
or they became Bitcoin maximalists, and they were angry about the fact that they saw that big corporations were trying to blow it up. So there were people on both sides of the debate who really thought this was the closest I would say Bitcoin comes to an existential crisis in my time in the space.
Oh, for sure. And it's the only cryptocurrency that's ever had this level of an attack. So that's why a lot of us say, like, these other coins, Ethereum and all these other coins, they are not decentralized in a way that matters and in a way that's going to be government resistant if it ever comes to that. So they all like to claim they're decentralized, but Bitcoin's the only cryptocurrency that's ever had that test where it's had to face the first level boss, which is itself. I mean, in 2013, we had to face regulators from New York and like the Bitcoin exchanges were getting harassed. Like Charlie Shrem got arrested, and Bitcoiners were being attacked. They were trying to attack Bitcoin. So we kind of had we saw what a regulatory attack looked like in 2013. But in an interview, I think it was even on Real Vision, where Katie Haun was the lead prosecutor for the Silk Road case, said that her bosses in New York were like, go after Bitcoin. We need you to take Bitcoin down. And she quickly realized, well, you can't stop Bitcoin. So then they said, well, go after the businesses, find out who's doing the Silk Road thing, and go after anybody who's involved in that. So then she started to sort of like focus on that. We saw, so that was part one. We saw, okay, well, the regulators sort of missed their opportunity, I think, to really attack Bitcoin. They could have in 2013, 14. It was kind of fragile enough back then. They could have stamped it out. But then in 2017, if we had given in and we had to let Coinbase and all these corporations have their way and take control over Bitcoin, then I think it might be much easier for people like Mike Green to get their wish and have the governments come in and shut Bitcoin down, because we would have failed.
Mike claims that's not what he wants. His claim is that he believes that's what's going to happen. Just a point of clarity.
Oh, I know what he claims. But I know what he thinks too. He's salty, man. He just doesn't want Bitcoin to win. So he's like, yeah, no, I'm all for freedom. I'm for liberty. Just shut that Bitcoin thing down. That's all. We just don't want that Bitcoin thing. That freedom providing Bitcoin thing. We don't want that.
I suspect if Mike were here, he would probably have a different take.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, he talks differently to Bitcoiners than he does to altcoiners, or sorry, to traditional fiat people. I've watched a bunch of interviews with him recently, and he really lets his real vision through when he's talking to someone who's not a Bitcoiner. When he's talking to a Bitcoiner, he's kind of like diplomatic and chooses his words carefully. But when he talks to another person who's not into Bitcoin, he calls us like financial terrorists and like, ridiculous things like, oh, we're the same as the people who are going to attack the Capitol, those people in Bitcoin and Antifa and Bitcoin. And it's like, okay, man, all right.
So Mike's not here to defend himself. Let's move on and keep going in a conversation, because this is really interesting. Look, for those who don't know and who weren't here at the time, in August of 2017, I think it was summer of 2017, the soft fork occurs in Bitcoin. You get the split between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, BCH, obviously still around, still trading, but continue on with that story.
Actually, talking about Mike Green, it makes sense because we can loop this in, because Mike has this philosophy or this idea that governments can empty block attack Bitcoin. And I don't think that he's kind of like doesn't understand it enough with his empty block thesis. But there is something that could happen, and it almost happened in 2017, which is a chain stall attack. And that's what I was most worried about in 2017, because when the fork happened and Bitcoin Cash split off and the biggest miner, Bitmain, and went off and started to support Bitcoin Cash, and you had one of the biggest funds in Japan go and support Bitcoin Cash, and there was a lot of early Bitcoin people that were like they had been following Roger for so long, and they kind of just followed him to Bitcoin Cash. So although there was a bunch of economic weight that went to Bitcoin Cash and a bunch of mining, and they were using, so this is where it gets a little bit complex, but there was like this 2-month period where there was now Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. They used the same mining algorithm. So there was a big miner that was saying that they were going to support Bitcoin Cash, and the guy that owned Bitcoin.com was going to replace Bitcoin with Bitcoin Cash, and he also had a bunch of mining power. And then there was this SegWit2x thing, which was like a corporate version of Bitcoin, where they wanted to say BitGo and Coinbase, and the New York agreement was all these 100 prominent Bitcoin companies that were going to support this SegWit2x coin. And then you had all the node runners, the like 100,000 nodes that are, you know, full nodes running Bitcoin, and all the developers were on the other side of the SegWit2x thing. So you had really Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and SegWit2x. And in November 2017, they were planning to fork Bitcoin, and all the exchanges were going to just point from Bitcoin to SegWit2x coin, which would have been now Bitcoin in their eyes. So then all of us that were just valuing Bitcoin and running the nodes for Bitcoin, were just going to stay on Bitcoin, and there was going to be 2 Bitcoins. One that was run by the developers and the users, and one that was run by the businesses that were onboarding 1 million or so users. So that is what we were facing. And then you had in the middle Roger Ver, who was just waiting to see if he was going to support SegWit2x or Bitcoin Cash. He definitely wasn't going to support Bitcoin. So you had a lot of like, it was really scary. And we had Bitfinex actually, thankfully, on our side as early Bitcoiners. They put up a futures market so that you could just put your money where your mouth was and bet on the price of Bitcoin for SegWit2x. And so like people like Adam Back and folks were really vocal on Bitcoin Twitter, talking about how their trades were going and like making predictions of the price of SegWit2x coin. And we saw the market sort of proved out that the consensus was that Bitcoin was going to win and that SegWit2x coin was a shit coin and it was not going to be supported and it was going to cause a lot of losses. And all of us Bitcoin maximalist folks were really willing to do scorched earth and just see the value of everything go to zero, because we would rather retain the properties of decentralization, censorship resistance, sovereignty, and all the ability to run a node for anybody in the world than see some like corporate version of Bitcoin take over just to save them some development resources and keep the fees low for the sake of adoption. So we're thinking in longer time frames. But the chain stall attack almost happened because all the Bitcoin miners sort of like piled on to Bitcoin and they added more difficulty on Bitcoin. So when you add more mining power on Bitcoin, the difficulty adjustment is one of the genius game theory things about Bitcoin and why it could stay decentralized. The difficulty adjustment changes based on the amount of hash power. And there's this period of time where it takes for a new difficulty adjustment to happen. So right before the SegWit2x was about to happen, all this new hash power started to come onto Bitcoin and it raised the difficulty up. So what the chain stall attack is that adding a ton of hash power, getting the difficulty readjusted to a much higher position, and then taking all your hash power away from it and putting it on Bitcoin Cash or the SegWit2x coin. Roger Ver was pumping up this thing, like everybody was promoting SegWit2x coin, the miners were adding hash power to Bitcoin, and the idea was that then when SegWit2x fork happened, they were going to take all their hash power away from the BTC that us, like the users and the developers were using, and put it onto this new coin, and then that would stall the chain so that we wouldn't have a block for like a month, because there wouldn't be enough hash power to get the difficulty readjusted down, and you'd see blocks slowing down to like a day, 2 days between blocks, and that would kind of stall the chain.
I know this is a highly technical debate for some of our viewers, but the idea is that the game theory point that Brad was just talking about is as new hash power comes online for Bitcoin, the difficulty adjustment, which is the the mechanism in the proof of work consensus mechanism adjusts to compensate for the hash power. And this was a mechanism that was potentially going to be used to kind of game the system so that there wouldn't be a block that would be minted for a significant period of time. And that would have been obviously quite negative for the original Bitcoin network.
Yeah, and it was the closest that it would ever have been possible to accomplish this attack in 2017, November 2017, because of all the elements that lined up. It's only because they ended up calling it off. They made the right decision. They ended up calling it off. They saw that this was going to actually be pretty disruptive to not just Bitcoin, but cryptocurrency and their businesses in general. And a lot of these guys have, a lot of, most of their economic weight is into cryptocurrencies. And I think they all realize pretty much that if they destroy Bitcoin, it's going to destroy cryptocurrency. And it's going to show that like this thing is a failed experiment. So why are we going to do this other fake Bitcoin? Bitcoin failed. So why are we going to do any of these things? Look, it would have been used by a lot of the detractors of Bitcoin that are now just like really hard coping about Bitcoin's success. They would have been pointing to this saying, see, look what happened in 2017. It failed. Like, this is a scam. We got to regulate this. People are going to get hurt. So thankfully, cooler heads prevailed and the maximalist mindset prevailed in 2017 and forced the businesses to capitulate to the will of the users. And that showed how decentralized Bitcoin really was and how it really is controlled by the Bitcoiners and the node runners and the users and the developers.
Right.
So to relate this to now, that was a really tough time for a lot of Bitcoiners, and it hardened a lot of Bitcoiners in their philosophies and in their hatred against all these other distractions and in their disdain for like the investors that were backing Segwit2x coin and ICOs and people like Vitalik and all the investors and all these altcoins and ICOs who were just sitting there eating popcorn, watching Bitcoin get forked. And actually people like Vitalik who were supporting Bitcoin Cash and Roger Ver tweeting out congratulations to him and Jihan on their successful attack of Bitcoin. I mean, that really that really caused some PTSD that I think is showing up now, even still, in the fact that how vitriolic some Bitcoin Twitter people can be. And they just, as soon as you mention an altcoin or something, you're just a dirty, no good shitcoiner or whatever. It's like, it's still PTSD from this. And I kind of understand why, because look at what all the investors and VCs and altcoiners did. They just stood by and watched as Bitcoin was like going through this traumatic experience, and they were betting on the other side. That's the way that we look at it anyways.
Yeah, and it's such an important piece of history. I know that there are people now who are in the space, many Real Vision subscribers, who came into it not for philosophical reasons, but as an investment, came into Bitcoin as an investment. And they're just baffled by why there's so much emotion around this. Ralph, for example, says all the time, like, I don't understand, why are people so upset? I'm an investor in Bitcoin. I invest in some other things. I think of it as just a portfolio of investments. I go a little bit further out in the risk curve with some of the more altcoins, but I'm still core in Bitcoin. And I think it's such an important story for people to understand the context, the history of how we got to where we are today. And it's just such an important story to get told.
Yeah, I think so. And there's a book that came out recently. BitMEX put out a book on this, and I'm blanking the name of it, but maybe we can throw it in the show notes or something when it's like the block size debate or something like that. I can't remember, but they just wrote a whole book on this, and it's been getting really good reviews online. It seems to be really fairly balanced. It's not just a one-sided take. It explains the perspective of all the different parties. So if people are really interested in diving deep on this, it's called The Block Size War. Yeah, The Block Size War. I think the reaction to people coming in and then like doing what Raoul Pal did, which is be a really vocal proponent for Bitcoin, talk really positively to Bitcoin, a different class of investors about Bitcoin, and bring in this whole different group of high net worth individuals and traditional finance folks who are just managing their own portfolios. Maybe they're managing for family offices. Maybe they're just like millennials who got like $100,000 and they just want to not lose it in a stock crash, whatever it is. It's a whole different mindset of people who have like a really, good alignment to Bitcoin. If they really got Bitcoin, they would really get it as a digital gold thing. So we saw this, and we were all cheering on Real Vision for a long time. And then I think it's the PTSD of what happened in 2017 when Raul starts to say, "Look, I'm warming up to Ripple." It's like, oh my God, not him too. Like we thought you were the chosen one. But it clearly it triggers a lot of Bitcoiners, because it then shows us that, like, okay, maybe Raul doesn't really understand this the way that we do, and he's just in this for the trade. And he says that all the time. It's not like he's been dishonest about it. He clearly said for a year or 2 years that this is the best macro trade opportunity I've seen in a while, best risk return ratio on this trade I've seen forever. It's the best macro like trade out there. So he always frames it in that perspective of it's a trade for him and it's a investment. But I think that's really the crux of it, is that Bitcoiners are not just in this for a trade. We really are in this to change money and to solve a serious problem that affects a lot of people in the world. And a lot of this altcoin crypto stuff is just like, it's like penny stocks or junk bonds or commodities or something like that. It's just not as important. And Bitcoiners are just frustrated that the new people that are coming in are getting confused and getting, we think, bad information about what's really going on and what these asset classes really are, because it's not Bitcoin and crypto, it's Bitcoin, and then there's everything else is kind of like a separate asset class.
Right.
That's really the way that we look at it. So when people say buy some, Bitcoin and ETH, those are the same sort of thing. Get exposure to crypto through Bitcoin and ETH. It's just like, it just shows that you really don't understand why we're in this and why this thing is important.
Right.
It's not just a trade or investment. It's literally like trying to solve a pretty serious problem in the world.
Well, obviously I work with Raul. I know him quite well, and I know that he has real, genuine respect and admiration for the Bitcoin community, for what's been done by and in the Bitcoin community. I just think that, like, this is really hard stuff, Brad. This is not like intuitive. And I think for people who aren't in the space full time, who weren't in the space in 2017, that sometimes these are just really difficult concepts to grasp. And for people who have traditional investment backgrounds, for people who don't have computer science backgrounds, for people who are, worked in hedge funds for 20 years, and they see this and they get excited. And I don't think it's just about, look, the price action obviously is a tremendous draw. That's the headline. That's the thing that pulls everyone into this space. Initially, who wasn't, perhaps part of the ideological movement very early on, that headline number, what happens to price action, is a huge deal. But I think for those of us who are, and I even consider myself relatively new to the space, compared to the OGs who've been here, who were in the trenches for a long time, it's just an overwhelming amount of information to try and understand. And for people who have traditional investing backgrounds, I think they often look at it like, well, yeah, Bitcoin is my largest holding, hypothetically, right? But like, I'm also interested in speculating on some other things as well. And I really like and genuinely admire the Bitcoin community. I like the things that they're doing there. And I like the way that they think about the world. I like the idea that they want to empower individuals. But at the same time, that's not going to stop me from investing in other assets. Look, I own a portfolio of stocks. Maybe I own 15 stocks, hypothetically. Why can't I own 5 or 6 different digital assets?
Yeah, I think that goes back to kind of what we said earlier about like the I guess the way that things were back in the earlier days when there was the first alt season in 2013, 14. It was more like there was a lot more camaraderie. It was a lot more fun. Dogecoin had come out at that time, and I know a lot of Bitcoiners were just like buying Dogecoin, mining Dogecoin, just having fun with the very decentralized meme. It was really fun back then. And even the altcoins, it was like we kind of had some fun. Of course, there was like a group of Bitcoiners who were really just against any kind of altcoin. And even myself, I was like kind of entertaining the idea that, oh yeah, maybe there could be a meme coin like Dogecoin that could be like number 2 to Bitcoin, or yeah, Litecoin is the silver to Bitcoin's gold. Sure, whatever. It's a faster version, has a silver logo. Let's do it. But that, as the block size debate raged on, and then we saw the VCs come in and invest in all these like projects with all this really scammy marketing, and and really trying to like attack Bitcoin's narrative or use case, where Circle and Coinbase and all these companies were trying to like take away the take away the method of exchange use case with their stablecoin products, and then seeing all these VCs backing these coins that were trying to take away Bitcoin's store value properties, and then push all these false narratives about Bitcoin is ossified, so that means it's not changing. Bitcoin can't do smart contracts, so that means it's going to miss out on the quadrillion dollars of derivatives volume, or all these, whatever, pick your narrative. That's what we're most frustrated with, is that the new people that come in, mentioned, that don't have this background are getting misinformation. They're getting pitched this like story of, Bitcoin's great, but look at this one, it's private, or look at this one, it does NFTs, so buy this one. And it's a disservice, I think, for people to learn about altcoins as if they have a fundamental value that's the same as Bitcoin. And I'm not against people trading penny stocks. I mean, I'm not against people doing Forex or binary options or investing in bronze or whatever they want to invest in. It's not against that. I think it's more so that we're very frustrated to see like the millions of new people that are coming to Bitcoin this cycle. Search, how do I buy Bitcoin? What is Bitcoin? And you can look at the Google search trends and you can see DeFi, NFTs, crypto, Dogecoin, any of these search terms compared to Bitcoin just pale in comparison. Bitcoin dominates everything. Bitcoin dominates the search terms. Bitcoin dominates transaction volume. If you look at anybody that's doing any kind of real world usage of peer-to-peer cash, it's Bitcoin. It's not any altcoin. Stable coins are growing in volume, but Bitcoin still dominates. If you look at like all the numbers that the merchants put out, the payment processing companies, it's 70-80% Bitcoin, and then stable coins are a second, and then it's maybe a couple altcoins like ETH and Monero. So you look at that, you look at the amount of people using DeFi, it's tiny. You look at the amount of people using NFTs, it's tiny. Like you can actually go to DeFi Pulse and Dapp Radar and look at the numbers on this stuff, and you can see, look at Etherscan if you want to check out DeFi liquidity pools and DeFi protocols. For the amount of press that these things are getting, it's totally ridiculous compared to the amount of users. Now, the amount of money going into this is different. This is the same as 2017. The whales are making their bets on this narrative that crypto is the future and everything's going digital and the network effects and all Metcalfe's law and like, so buy this shitcoin. Look how much volume it's doing. But literally, you go look at the Etherscan and you can see how many people are interacting with these contracts. It's in the tens of thousands compared to Bitcoin, which is in the hundreds of millions. Well, 150 or so million people in the world own Bitcoin. So it's like we get pretty frustrated because all these VCs and influencers and educators and stuff that should be doing more education on Bitcoin, and they kind of don't talk about this bearish sort of negative side of it, which is a lot of froth, a lot of FOMO, and a lot of it's almost like this distraction from, don't look at actually how many people are using this, just look at the total amount of volume. That's what you want to look at. And I really don't think that there's enough critical coverage of these things, because we are in an alt season, we're in a bull market, there's a ton of froth in this market. So yes, it's going to dominate headlines and stuff, especially for companies that are making money on subscribers and ad views and sponsorships and stuff like that. They want to talk about what people are, buying, what's going up in price, because it attracts people. But I really think this is just a repeat of 2017. And I don't think there's anything fundamentally valuable being built in the crypto space besides Bitcoin. I think all this stuff is going to go down, not another 96% again, once this bubble pops. But because we're in this environment where the Federal Reserve is encouraging people to just take extra risk, they're printing trillions of dollars, they're keeping interest rates low, everything's going up. Houses going up, stocks are going up, Pokemon cards are going up, sports cards, sneakers are going up, everything's going up. I bet you those books in the background are going up. You probably sell your books for a 2 or 3x right now. People are just putting their dirty fiat money, which is going down in value, into anything else that's not fiat, and that's including cryptocurrencies. So it's like all this education is being done about why Aave is so important for decentralized lending, or why Uniswap is such a groundbreaking technology for decentralized exchange. It's the future of securities exchanges or whatever. And I really think it's a bunch of nonsense, because there's 40,000 people using Uniswap. It's this exact same people that were using Bittrex and Binance in 2017. It's the exact same pools of people that were trading ICOs that are trading NFTs. So it's not like this new groundbreaking thing that's, I think, going to have long-term fundamental value. I think Bitcoin is the thing. Bitcoin is the thing that's going to have the continued Lindy effect. And right now we're in a crazy bubble that's going to end up popping, just like hot stocks or anything else, just like crypto last time. So that's where it's frustrating. It's not like we're against new technology. It's just that the investment thesis for driving people into buying altcoins, I feel, is going to end up getting people wrecked, just like it happened in 2014 and happened in 2017. It's probably going to happen again in a year or 6 months or whenever this altcoin party ends. Bitcoin's going to be the thing that retains its value. And I don't think any other cryptocurrency is going to end up becoming like a competitor to gold as a reserve asset for sovereign wealth funds or something like that. You're not going to see a sovereign wealth fund put ETH or like Uniswap going on their balance sheet. So that's really, I think, where it comes from. It's just, we're just super frustrated to see, like, we learned nothing in the bear market from 2018 and 19. It's like, oh yeah, I guess all this stuff can have value again. Let's do it. Let's go for it, because the price is going up. And I realize I'm starting to sound a little bit like Mike Green here, so I'm gonna.
We've barely scratched the surface of this debate, but I think this is such an important piece for Real Vision to hear this view, for you to bring your institutional knowledge, perspective, history to this, to give people a sense and a context of what this debate is all about and how the Bitcoiners see the world. I think this is incredibly valuable for our subscribers. Thank you so much for joining us. But before we go, what are your final thoughts that you'd like to impart to people who maybe have just heard this side of the argument for the first time and are interested in hearing more?
Okay, so if it's Real Vision Crypto, most of the people that are probably subscribed to this are of the mindset that they got tons of altcoins and they're probably trying to look for the next gem. And I would say, don't sleep on Bitcoin. Don't sleep on the Lightning Network. Don't believe all the narratives that are being pushed on YouTube, and don't believe that people are just trying to sell you their altcoin and just try to give you excuses for why this is better than Bitcoin. And literally, that's what's happening. I see so many people commenting to me on Twitter and stuff that are in crypto, just totally misunderstanding Bitcoin and not getting what makes Bitcoin valuable. And they're pushing all these false narratives, like Bitcoin can't scale, Bitcoin can't be its only store of value, Bitcoin can't do anything, it's boring, Bitcoin's a boomer coin. Like I just would hate to see people suffer through a 95% correction to be this early in finding Bitcoin and then lose their money in altcoins holding it through a bear market. So I would say listen to more Bitcoin education stuff. Like, come on Clubhouse and come into the Bitcoin rooms, come on to Cafe Bitcoin on Clubhouse. If you need a Clubhouse invite, like, reach out to me on Twitter at Brad Mills Can there, and I'll send you an invite. And just educate yourself more on Bitcoin, and don't be too overexposed to the altcoins. Sure, if you want to take some speculative plays, you want to try to 10x your position or whatever in a bull market, go for it. Just learn more about Bitcoin. Just dedicate some of your learning resources towards Bitcoin and learning why it's valuable. Check out Preston Fish's podcast is an amazing resource. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have you back, and I'm going to try and convince you at some point to switch seats with me and interview someone else on this topic, because I think it's a really important conversation for us to have. It's definitely one that I think it's important for us to have at Real Vision. Brad, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ash. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you for watching this interview. This is just a taste of what we do at Real Vision. To learn more about the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy, click on the membership link in the description. Give us 7 days to change your life. This will be the best dollar you ever invest.
always thinking about your dandruff. New Head & Shoulders Clinical Strength has 35% more dandruff-fighting power. Head & Shoulders Clinical Strength.
Welcome to Ethereum, an investigation. I'm Ash Bennington. Many think of Ethereum as Bitcoin 2.0, a programmable version of Bitcoin. That's a very controversial view in some quarters. We're going to explore that topic and others in this episode. I'm joined on this journey, of course, by Alex Saunders of Nuggets News. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me on, Ash.
And of course, our co-founder and CEO, Ralph Howell. Welcome, Ralph.
Thanks for having me on, Ash.
You're very welcome, sir. Let's start out talking a little bit about your journey into Ethereum. First, Alex, how did you get involved in the Ethereum ecosystem, and what's your current view of where we are today?
Well, interestingly enough, it was through a hack, which are rife in the crypto world. So I was actually part of a group who were, you remember back in the day when there was the Mt. Gox incidents when everyone lost their Bitcoins? There was another smaller exchange, which people don't know about, and I was one of those that lost some Bitcoins. And there was a group of guys saying, I'm so disappointed because I didn't get to partake in the Ethereum ICO. And I said, oh, you know what, I've heard about that, but the Bitcoiners are giving it a hard time and saying that it's just another, shit coin. And so I'd never looked into it too much deeper than that. And then I finally decided to do my own research. And once I went down that rabbit hole in late 2015, 2016, and you get your head around the fact that there's so much more to this than just the blockchain of value. It's now smart contracts and all these other applications that are possible. So that's where I got very excited about that. And I think here we are today where it's just to the point where it's showing people what's possible and the potential, but now we need to scale that out, get more developers and get more users.
Yeah. And Raul, you, of course, were very early to Bitcoin. I think it was the second video that we did here at Real Vision back in 2014 when you were talking about Bitcoin. How did you get involved in Ethereum?
I was very late to Ethereum. I was aware of it because when I started learning about Bitcoin, the people who were teaching me about it were also talking about smart contracts very early on. This was back in 2015 or so, 16. So I was aware of smart contracts and the potential that was going to bring. But as Ethereum ran up in 2017 and Bitcoin did, I wasn't involved, and it was just distraction to me because I'm a very macro guy. So I try and distill it down to what is the simplest bet I can take. But then move on a few years, and I'm starting to have an opinion about, okay, look, I've always thought this digital asset space is huge. And it's not just Bitcoin, because there are going to be different applications for different things. And while Bitcoin may solve some of the things that Ethereum currently solves, it's not necessarily clear that it needs to happen, that they don't all have a place in the ecosystem. So for me, Bitcoin is the bet on the kind of reserve asset with the technology upside and the adoption and all of that. And Ethereum is the platform. It gives me the opportunity to invest in the future of the broader space. So I think of the two as having a very nice combined asset allocation.
Very interesting. Let's start things off. We're going to look at a series of interviews here today. And we're going to start things off with the man himself, co-founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin. Let's take a look.
Another interesting thing about the time period, I think, compared to now, was that back then it was it felt more like kind of exploring undiscovered territory. Like it was this sort of idealistic exploration of like new and unknown things. Like, we knew that certain kinds of financial.
Sorry for interrupting your video, but I have an important message to share. At Real Vision, we pride ourselves on providing the very best in-depth expert analysis available to help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy. So if you like what you see on Real Vision's YouTube channel, that is just the tip of an iceberg. You should come over to realvision.com and see how we are not leaving any stone unturned, from publishing more in-depth videos, live discussions, written reports, and our latest feature, The Exchange, where you get a chance to engage with experts and fellow subscribers and learn from everyone's experience. It is an experience which you live and you learn from. So if you go to the link in the description or go to realvision.com, it costs you just $1. I don't think you can afford to be without it.